The Logos War Saga by William L. Weaver, Ph.D. Read by Google Gemini for Workspace. Persuader Voice. Book 1. The Great Unraveling. Chapter 3. The Echo. Jaren woke on the cot, the familiar crick in his neck a dull ache. The annex was cold, but the multi-toned hum of Echo's servers was wrong. The deep, steady thrum of the power supply was still there, but it was overlaid with a high-pitched, discordant whine, the sound of a machine tearing itself apart. He sat bolt upright, his blood turning to ice. He scrambled to the main console, his eyes scanning the screen for the familiar, patient data stream. Instead, a single line of text flashed in stark, angry red. Catastrophic thermal failure. Core Cluster 7. Meltdown imminent. The heatsink, his creation, his elegant solution, had failed. The very machine he had built to find the answer was now being consumed by the question. A wave of nausea washed over him. Finch was right. Ben was right. He had pushed too far, invited the chaos in, and it had finally broken down the door. As if summoned by the thought, a heavy, methodical banging began at the annex fire door. Thump, thump, thump. It wasn't the frantic pounding of a fire crew. It was the cold, patient rhythm of authority. "University security!" a muffled voice called out. "Miles, we have reports of a massive power surge originating from this lab. You're browning out the entire building. Open this door, now." Panic seized him. It was over. They would shut him down, confiscate his research, and cast him out. He would be a pariah, the madman in the basement who almost burned the university to the ground chasing ghosts in the static. His career, his life's work would end right here, in this cold, dark room, with the smell of melting silicon and failure. Thump, thump, crack. The sound of splintering wood echoed through the lab. They were breaking the door down. He looked around wildly, a cornered animal searching for an escape. The windows were too high, barred from the outside. There was no other exit. His frantic gaze fell upon the server racks, upon the thick, armored power conduit he had installed himself, snaking from the main breaker panel and disappearing into the concrete wall behind Core Cluster 7. It was a direct, high-amperage line, bypassing the building's ancient wiring. It ran through a forgotten service tunnel, a relic from the Cold War era that wasn't on any modern schematic. His mind, sharpened by adrenaline, made the connection. On a workbench lay his plasma torch, a custom tool he'd built for precision welding. It was a desperate, insane idea. He grabbed the torch, its familiar weight, a small comfort. As the fire door groaned, its hinges beginning to buckle, he ignited the torch. A brilliant, near-silent needle of white-hot energy hissed to life. He turned to the wall behind the server rack, his hands moving with a speed born of pure terror, and began to cut. The door burst open with a deafening crash. Jaren woke with a start, a gasp catching in his throat. His body was slick with the residue of the vision, a cold sweat that plastered his shirt to his skin and stung his eyes. For a moment, his eyesight was a foggy blur, the dark, pipe-strung ceiling of the annex swimming in and out of focus. He blinked, the saltiness of his own terror, a sharp taste on his lips. Then, through the fog, the real world rushed back in. The crick in his neck was a sharp, protesting reminder of his makeshift bed. The air was cold, a deep, penetrating chill that settled in a room with poor insulation and a steady supply of liquid nitrogen. And the sound, the multi-toned hum of Echo's servers, was a familiar symphony of processing and cooling, steady, powerful, and perfectly harmonious. His heart was still hammering against his ribs, but the discordant whine of the nightmare was gone. It was just a dream. He sat up, his body stiff and aching, a dull throb behind his eyes from too much caffeine and not enough sleep. He looked at the main console across the room, half expecting to see the flashing red of his nightmare. A single line of text glowed in the darkness, patient and implacable. Analysis complete. A jolt of adrenaline, cold and sharp, cut through the grogginess, chasing away the last phantoms of his dream. He scrambled off the cot, but his body protested. The 7 hours of fitful sleep hadn't been enough to erase the 36 hours of frantic work that preceded it. Before he could face the answer, he had to face himself. He stumbled to a small, unmarked door on the far wall of the annex, a door that led to a forgotten custodian's closet he had claimed as his own. The closet was tiny, the air thick with the smell of mildew and old plumbing, but it contained a working toilet and a rust-stained sink. He relieved himself, the simple biological act, a strange and grounding ritual. He then turned the squeaking faucet, the water that sputtered out shockingly cold. He splashed it on his face, the icy shock, a welcome slap of reality, washing away the last vestiges of sleep. A makeshift cold water scrub and a clean but hopelessly wrinkled t-shirt was a balm. He looked up at his reflection in the cracked, grimy mirror. A pale, wild-eyed man with hair that stood on end. A ghost in his own machine. Refreshed, he walked back into the main lab, his mind now clear and sharp. He grabbed a protein bar and a high-caffeine energy drink from his mini-fridge, his battle rations. He unwrapped the bar and took a bite, the chalky texture a familiar penance, and washed it down with a long pull from the can. Ready, he crossed the room, the cold concrete floor seeping through his socks, and sat down in the worn leather chair. He took a deep, shaky breath, held it, and then spoke to the empty room. "Show me." The screen flickered, the streams of raw data replaced by a single, elegant visualization. It was a 3D model of the cosmic microwave background, the faint, mottled afterglow of the Big Bang, represented as a vast celestial sphere. But superimposed on it, glowing in a soft electric blue, was the pattern. It wasn't a static image. It was alive. He saw it first as a great tapestry, the lines of blue light-like threads woven directly into the red and orange fabric of the CMB, much like the diaphanous arteries of yttrium that ran throughout his superconductor. Some threads were brilliant, almost burning with the intensity of new information. Others were faded, ancient, and frayed at the edges, hinting at rules that were no longer in effect. Then his mind adjusted, and he saw it not as a tapestry, but as a cascading hierarchy of neural networks like those that enabled Echo's existence. The threads were conduits, and at their intersections, the nodes flared with a soft synaptic light, firing off information that pulsed through the celestial lacework. It was a living, thinking thing. Finally, his perception shifted again, and he understood the true, terrifying geometry of it. The lines passed through each other without intersecting, and the nodes would momentarily unfold into complex, multifaceted shapes that couldn't exist in 3 dimensions. He was seeing the shadow of a topological space having 14 dimensions, a constant, graceful unfolding of impossible differential geometry. His mind, uniquely forged by his diverse heritage and multidisciplinary studies, didn't just see the image, it absorbed it. The torrent of visual data bypassed conscious thought and became a direct download of pure understanding. It was a language, and for the first time in human history, someone was reading it. Below the visualization, the final confirmation appeared, the text as stark and irrefutable as a law of nature. Pattern confirmed, probability of random occurrence, 1 in 10 to the 24. Attribution. This material was developed through a collaborative conversation between myself and Google Gemini.